Yeah. Very good afternoon to the viewers of this webinar on very contemporary topic, the contemporary academic research, challenges and contribution. We have the presence of Assistant Professor of IIM Raipur, Dr. Rajesh Pathak. In absentia, my Vice Chairman, CA Umesh Sharma and CA Anuj Goyal. So by the time they are going to join to grace this occasion, let me share with you the profile of our learned faculty, Dr. Rajesh Pathak. Rajesh is a doctorate and he's dual masters in finance and accounting and business, MCOM and MBA. His area of expertise is financial and management accounting, corporate finance, financial reporting and analysis, financial derivatives. Dr. Pathak is assistant professor at IIM Raipur, and very recently we had a international research award, and Dr. Pathak is one of the awardee, wherein 18 countries participants participated, and he is one of the paper out of 13 paper is of Dr. Rajesh Pathak. So I feel proud that we have the faculty like Dr. Rajesh Pathak with us. So with these words, I would request Dr. Rajesh Pathak to start the deliberation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amit. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me, and I truly appreciate the initiative of ICAI. Thank you very much, and I welcome all the participants. So I'm told that probably this session would last for 90 minutes, and then probably there would be Q&A, that too based on the chat box. And I'm told that the entire idea of having this particular webinar is to excite the audience about the process of academic research, particularly in contemporary times, and what it really takes to publish and contribute to the body of knowledge, existing body of knowledge. So with that objective, I'll very quickly share these slides, and then I'll go on the agenda that I have. So I'm sure you are able to see the screen that I have shared. Is that visible? Thank you very much for confirming, Dr. Amit. Okay, so let us begin. So what we'll do out here probably is just a minute. Let me set the screen for myself, and then probably I'll begin. Okay, so I hope this is visible to you, and I begin by a couple of disclosures out here. The disclosure in the sense that, you know, I'm not an expert. Do not consider me an expert as such. I'm calling somebody an expert. I really don't appreciate that idea too much. I mean, there is so much in this vast field of knowledge that nobody can be expert in my view. However, of course, people with their experiences learn things, and it's always better to share. So I would say it is more of an experience sharing as an academic researcher, particularly about writing and publishing, is what I'm going to do with you. What I also say is that probably the things that I'm going to talk about, and if at all you have been familiar with academic writing and research, maybe some of the things that you would hear here is what you are already familiar with, and maybe a couple of new additions if you get, probably that's my luck. I would probably talk about the key ingredients that I consider in my past experience about successfully completing some of the research projects. However, I would not really get into the language part of it, vocabulary, grammar, and things like that. To be honest, I'm not a language expert. Sometimes I also get my own draft language edited in case there is a need. So therefore, I won't be focusing on the language, but rather I would be focusing on the ingredients. In fact, my observations or experience would be largely driven, through the exposure that I have into research, and particularly into the field of accounting and finance, which is the area that I belong to. Of course, my objective here for this session, as I'm told, and I have tried to prepare accordingly, is to highlight the key ingredients of successful publishing in academic research with a focus to the domain of accounting and finance, is what I'll be talking. And that's how I think we can contribute to the body of knowledge. Now, to be honest, what probably makes me a bit eligible to be a speaker to this session and talk to this illustrious crowd that I have, people with fantastic, career and prospects and knowledge, is that I have got some decent experience in conducting the academic research, a reasonable amount of published work that I have till date in my academic career of 10 years across the quality ranking that we have. And therefore, I think I'm a bit eligible to talk about the stuff that I'm being invited to talk here. So with that disclosure, I will very quickly start with this, this session. And in the form of prelude, I would say research is essential. Research actually is essential for a better world. In fact, if you look at the idea of research, where you talk about creativity, you talk about innovations, and then development of knowledge, which is very, very essential to sustain and for a compassionate and just society to be there for us to share a harmonious relationship and stay together into the society. I think research at the broader framework is very, very essential. And if I go to the secondary item, particular research as far as the educational institute is concerned, including IIM and ICAI, I think research is the core element for the mission of higher education for the reason that the educator should not only be concerned about teaching what is the existing body of knowledge, not only about disseminating the information, but also creating the knowledge and adding to the body of knowledge. And therefore, it is a very, very important mission to know about the nitty-gritty of research. And I'm glad that ICI has organized one of those sessions. So, if you ask my opinion, what is academic research, and particularly academic research in the field of social science, I would say it is unique. It is unique due to some of the characteristics that it has. Some of the characteristics that it has, I would say, it is a skill of higher order. It is a skill of higher order for what reason? Due to its audience. Audience is really intellectuals. They are not going to accept weaker arguments, fragile arguments, and arguments that do not fit the logic. So they are really, really intellectual audience. You cannot just tell them anything which they'll accept. So the audience is quite illustrious. The writing has to be very, very precise. It has to be very, very impersonal and very, very objective to the context that you are writing. So therefore, it's very, very important. Another characteristics of academic writing is you will find that people use very, very complex terminologies. There are sometimes I have my own disagreements with the complex terminologies, but then there are things that you cannot do away with. In case you are in a particular field, you will have to use some of those terminologies because they are the buzzword and they kind of are well accepted into the market. Of course, some of the is higher order of a skill because it has intricate research methods, very, very complex and apt methods to different situations and different research questions. Of course, it requires a structured presentation, and then of course it has its own writing, referencing, footnoting style. So due to these particular characteristics, constituents of academic writing, I would call academic writing to be a higher order of a skill. However, I would also say that it is also sometimes when I see and in my experience the research papers that I have read through across the classification of journals, I feel that sometimes it is unnecessarily complicated. I mean, you could have said the same thing in simpler words than the words that you have chosen to communicate the same thing in the academic world. So therefore, sometimes I find it to be unnecessarily complicated. Sometimes it is exaggerated, pompous, long-winded, and so more technical that you fail to, kind of continue with your attention, and therefore the learning stops. So these are some of the hindrances sometimes I feel that is there into the academic writing. Of course, that depends on what classes of journals are you reading. This would be less often visible in the journals of higher quality compared to journals of probably lower quality, which are still to be accepted by wider audience. Academic writing is sometimes very, very authoritative, and it is without humor, and that is what sometimes fails to engage the reader into the writing. It would really be a good exercise in case people try to communicate it in effective manner, but having some humor which attracts the attention and at the same time delivers the learning really well. And then, of course, I also think that it is also elitist and sometimes excludes outsiders. So these are some of the things which refer or render academic writing as higher order of a skill. And there is a purpose to do that. The purpose of academic writing is to share knowledge, as you know. Whatever knowledge that you have gained or you have explored yourself, you have to share that with the wider audience. The first stakeholder being the academics itself, and then of course there is industry, there are regulators, there are other market participants who might benefit, the companies working into the environment might benefit, and for those reasons you need to share that knowledge, publish that. Particularly in academics, it is also very, very important to enhance your academic career. Your several benefits, incentives attached in your career of academics are very, very based on research, and therefore you need to engage in research. And of course, to show how your investigation fits in the current science and contributes. So these are the purposes of doing the academic research. Academic writers, as I say, as it is remark here, are not expected to make subjective judgments. You have to be very, very clear about it. Not making categorical remarks and use the information from very, very unreliable sources. Authenticity is very, very important. What you say is what you should really be, contextualizing or saying in what circumstances this may hold, this may not hold, and accordingly you should pitch your research. Now, after giving you this background of why research is essential, what is academic writing, and what are some of the characteristics of academic writing, I would now try to delve deeper into something called the prerequisites of academic writing or research, contemporary academic research. And it's been found that to do a good research and publish it, the understanding of a reading writing linkage is very, very important. It's been said that those who read more write better, and those who write better end up reading more. So it looks like a cycle where reading is very, very substantial to a better writing, and then better writing would further lead you to do more and more reading because you want the communication to be very, very effective. And by reading that, you will identify the lacuna in the current knowledge. And then by reading that, you will understand how to fulfill this gap. And accordingly, you would end up write better. So what would happen is the moment you understand the linkage between reading and writing, you would understand that a vigorous literature review is very, very important. And then identifying the gap, doing or improving your reading skills by identifying the lacuna into the existing knowledge becomes very, very essential. And then the second is, of course, critical thinking. Critical thinking is very, very important. I mean, I think a lot of research, successful research, comes in the flavor that you see because there has been a lot of thought that has been spent, a lot of contemplation has taken place. People, look at one idea, try to connect it with the existing ideas, try to find out what it would lead to. This would really require a lot of contemplation and also a rationalization of the thoughts in order to build on what do you think as a gap, as a research question, and which you want to explore further and learn about. So I say these are some of the prerequisites about what and how to begin the academic research to develop it well and to publish. Now, if you look at the types of academic writing, before I directly jump to the academic research in terms of research papers, you would say that there are a variety of writings that exist in the form of academics, but starting with, let's say, people write essays, people write case studies, people write literature reviews, people write dissertation, people write research papers. All of them are the part of academic writing, and all of them may have some common characteristics, but they are also different by some of the characteristics. For example, an academic essay is written in a particular context. You have a particular context, and you want to defend that argument, you want to talk into the favor of argument, or you want to give a general information about it. That's how academic essay is written. It is more of dissemination of information, or defending your argument. Whereas if you look at a case where you particularly look into a context or a particular company or a specific organization, and you look at a situation that has got developed, and then you try to get some learning out of it. That's how you develop a case. A review of literature, which is published very often, they very much look at, in a particular context, on a particular theme, or a strand of literature, what is the series of works that has taken place, and what is their common finding? Is the finding conclusive? Is the finding is having mixed result? Is the finding leading nowhere? What is it actually in a particular field of study is what you try to achieve through a review of literature. Whereas a dissertation, as you know, is the work of a doctorate, where he spends his the blood and sweat for a couple of years to figure out a topic, and then work substantially into it to complete the requirements of a particular academic program. And then, of course, in that way, he also ends up adding the knowledge, or adding or contributing to the body of knowledge. But of course, this is quite a substantial work. It is not a research paper yet. From there, of course, dissertation, most of the PhD students are found to publishing papers where they extract separate components from their dissertation, try to polish it in the manner a research paper should be presented, and then they write. So what is a research paper? Research paper actually provides you very detailed information on the topic through different sections, starting with first what is the objective of this study, and then they'll tell about what is the literature existing, what is the methodology that can be used in the context, what are the related discussions based on the results that you get, and how do you conclude about that research. So this is how a research paper writing is slightly different from the other academic writing, which we need to be careful about the moment we talk about types of academic writing. Now this leads me to talk about or give you what is the perspective that you should have about academic research in this contemporary world, in the contemporary field, which is quite competitive. And probably I'll take a couple of examples here to also explain you what I mean here. When you publish academic research and you try to gauge a perspective, you have to answer a couple of questions. You have to answer the question, who is writing and why? Why this is to be written, why it is important to write this, and who is writing that. So your credential is very, very important, and that's kind of implicit in all the writing. And then the broader question is, and more important question is, for what reason it is being written? Is there a clarity of the research question? Is that question so important? For instance, sometimes I see research scholars saying there is no existing study on this. Hey, that is not enough. There is no existing study, probably because that does not deserve attention, right? You have to figure out a strong reason why something that has not been studied deserves attention. How that particular study would add to the body of knowledge. And the moment you are able to do so, probably yes, then I'll say that's the clarity of research question. But just something has not been done does not mean that must be done, right? So that's one very important thing. Many times research papers start with the idea, hey, it looks like this has not been done, let us do it. You have to think twice why it has not been done, and then probably go ahead and do it. Then, of course, the second thing that you have to find out, what is the relevance? What is the relevance of what you are doing? And this relevance, I'm talking in terms of contemporary research trends. What are the topics that are deserving attention? And can you be someone who can pick a theme or pick a gap into the contemporary, or emerging fields of research, and then try to address some of the questions out there. For instance, let's say, I'm somebody who very often try to look at the regulations based studies. The moment there is a regulation, and the moment you bring a regulation, you try to address some of the imperfections into the market through your regulations, right? And the moment the regulations are there, if at all it is trying to address some of the imperfections into the market, then of course, depending on what kind of which stream of field in which the regulation is, but accordingly, whatever it is trying to address some of the imperfections, and then you would like to see the efficiency or the achievements of those regulations, whether the regulation was able to achieve its intended objective or not, is something that you can always explore by looking at the regulation based research. For instance, if I look at some of the recent trends, very, very contemporary trends in the field of accounting, I find mandatory CSR law, which has been now, that CSR spending has been mandated by a regulation where companies, based on their past 3 years' profits, they're supposed to spend 2% of their past 3 years' profits, average past 3 years' profits, on CSR activities, failing to which they have penalties assigned, right? Now, you might look at what this regulation will lead to, right? One of the things that contemporarily we are looking at, for instance, and this I'm telling you because I want you to think through this lens and then accordingly try to identify a topic that is worth pursuing, and probably that will interest the publisher as well, and you would really be adding to the contemporary research. So for instance, we are saying, hey, if I look at CSR, corporate social responsibility, the moment I say social responsibility, I say it has to be voluntary. You cannot force people to be, socially responsible. I mean, that's how the world was. And that's how the companies, those who were engaging in CSR before, were behaving. They were, in fact, if I read the literature and look at the behavior of companies, it seems like most of the times companies were engaging in CSR voluntarily prior to this law. And that was used by companies as a differentiation strategy, that I'm different than other peers because I'm engaging in CSR. So my visibility, my other things would be more into the market. People will perceive and have high opinion about me. So the product might sell more and consumed more, and therefore I might have a growth in my revenue, and therefore a growth in the bottom line, and therefore the company might perform better. So this was used as a differentiation strategy. But the moment you mandate it, you are killing that differentiation. The moment you say now everybody has to spend on CSR, you are saying, hey, come on, the differentiation benefit that I was getting is no more there. I mean, now I'm telling you, this is one of the line of the thought. There could be multiple. So I'm just telling you one of the line of the thought that we are pursuing as of now. So we are saying, hey, probably after this law, the differentiation strategy has gone away. And therefore, can the companies also try to lower their spending on CSR? And if they try to do so, probably they would like to understate their earnings than what their economic realities are. And if so is the case, probably this regulation would give a rise to earnings management. This is just one line of thought. I'm not saying what I'm saying is the rule, and what I'm saying is the only way to think on it. But this is one of the ways to think on it, and we are trying to figure out, does this mandatory law has led to earnings management activities, or engagement of companies into managing their earnings downward? So this is something that we are looking at. So what I'm trying to tell you, how do you identify the relevance of contemporary research topics? Similarly, there is a regulation on mandatory dividend policy. If you remember, a couple of years ago, the government also mandated the top 500 companies based on market cap that they must mandatorily disclose their dividend policy. They have not said that you should pay this percentage of dividend. No, they have not said. Of course, there is such a regulation for PSUs in our country as of now. But what they have said is that, yes, top 500 companies mandatorily disclose under what circumstances probably they are going to pay dividend. And we are saying, okay, if so is this case, then probably this regulation would reduce the information asymmetry that exists into the market. Right? At least if the company start disclosing and talking about in what circumstances will pay dividend, the uncertainty around dividend payment from companies would reduce. If that happens, then there are theory existing that what happens when the uncertainty reduces, then probably the company's information asymmetry reduces. In that case, everybody is more aware about the company, so it is possibly it will have an impact on cost of capital of the company. Their cost of capital would reduce. If so happens, then probably the valuation of the company would improve. Now, just one regulation, you looked at the characteristics of the regulation and tried to figure out what are some of the ways in which this can impact. And therefore, you can go and look at value assessment of this regulation. Hey, due to this regulation, then is there a value impact on the firms? Go and evaluate that, and probably if you are able to prove something out of it, maybe that would be a good research. So what we are trying to say, and that would be a very well accepted research by the publishers, by the regulators, by the participants of the market, where we are trying to show something which is very much working into the market, and that is what is being seen by the marketplace, right? There was a regulation on derivatives as well. These are some of the areas where I quite often work, so I'm giving you examples from there. Where when you talk about financial derivatives, a couple of years ago, the law came that now in the derivative section, the settlement would no more be cash based, but it would be physical settlement. And due to that, probably the behavior or the trading behavior of participants into the market might change, and that is something particularly during this expiry week. And therefore you can go and look at it. Did it affect the trading intensity for those stocks the moment this regulation came? And probably you can say in what direction this regulation has really worked. So what I'm saying in terms of, you can talk about liquidity into the market, you can talk about the trading intensity into the market and things of that sort. These days, if you look at some of the contemporary topics such as, ESG, the environmental, social, and governance, most of the companies are now, in many countries, by law required to disclose that. We have something similar. We don't have ESG reporting mandatory, but we have something business responsibility reporting in our country as well, where you have to support, you are supposed to disclose information related to that. And then you can look at, okay, what is happening? Companies which are engaging into ESG more often, what are their impacts? How their probably various performance measures are changing, their revenues, growth, profit potential, everything is changing compared to companies which are not engaging. And then probably you can talk in favor of that due to ESG. If the companies are socially concerned, companies are concerned about environment and sustainability, how that probably those companies' performance get affected in terms of the visibility and the product sales and other things that they get into the market. So what we are saying is, this is how you can identify some of the contemporary topics on which probably the research can be done. And as I said, I would be largely talking with examples which is largely specific to accounting and finance domain, because that's what my area that I belong to. Okay. So this is about, you should be very, very careful about why something needs to be done and what is contemporary. Then you should understand what is the level of audience awareness. So audience awareness, who am I primarily writing for? Are you writing for industry? Are you writing for regulator? Are you writing for the stakeholders? It is possible that one research writing kind of helps everyone, but whom it is more focused to, accordingly, you will have to pitch your writing. And then, of course, in your writing, you should address what do you expect your readers to know about the topic? What do I expect my readers to know about? And if they don't, can you give some more idea on effective communication? So you will have to talk about the theoretical linkages, what is the existing literature and evidences suggesting about the topic that you are working, and it would be a good idea that you do an effective communication given who are the audience that you are targeting, right? So this is the perspective that I'm trying to give. I say that academic research can be defined if you based on the thoughts that I have given you so far, if you try to define what is academic research, it appears like very consistent to something that we talk in accounting, we call gap. And I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with that. We say it is like identifying, analyzing, pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and then presenting the relevant economic concerns in a given context for the people to understand and learn. And that's what I call as generally accepted principle of academic writing, which you can call gap. And of course, the moment you look at these principles, you have to, and there is no regulator as such, right? And there is nobody auditing as such. Of course, reviewers are there, but you don't have such reviewers are mostly rejecting your papers. So in that case, if you want to not get into such a circumstance, then you will have to self-regulate. An academic writer, it's supposed to be self-regulating himself. I mean, you have to write, you have to read it again, you have to find out is there a lacuna, you have to read it and do that iteration so many times, probably to come up with the best that you can in terms of the writing, with the more concise and precise writing, how you can make people learn and understand things. So that's one of the perspective that you should keep while you are engaging in academic research. Now, as I said, gap of academic writing, and I have given you that there are principles that you should keep in mind. I have just made some bullet points. These are not exhaustive, but at the same time, they are going to give you enough information about what to be careful of. Don't make a mistake of thinking that academic writing means using complex English and long words. No, absolutely not. Simpler it is, better it is. Shorter it is, better it is. A smaller paragraph and a smaller sentences it is, much better it is. It is easy to understand in that case. So some of the bullet points that you can just read and probably from the slides and understand it. It is formal, logical, cautious, unemotional language you should use. You should try to be easy and understandable. Lesser use of slang, jargons, personal anecdotes, colloquium, exclamation remarks. These are probably not liked very much by the academic community. You should be very, very clear and very, very specific in writing. Make sure your claims are tentative rather than definitive, because in social science research, there could be two extremes of a theory, and only in social science it is possible that both of them can get Nobel Prize. So point is that both the theory can hold perfectly true in the circumstances where you kind of argue about it. So it is unlikely that you have reached only the one possible conclusion. So you should make your claims tentative rather than definitive. Words which signal tentativeness. So how do you indicate that while you are writing? How do you try to communicate that you are tentative? You might use the word like may, might, possibly, in some instances, also in many cases, instead of things like always, right? Or perfect and all the times, right? So certainly. So these are some of the words which you should probably avoid, because you can never be that certain and that definitive in a social science research. And then, of course, while writing, it is expected that you are consistent in the voice that you use and in the tense that you use. If you're writing in passive, write passive. The active voice is what I see more often used. And usually, present tense is what I see very often used into the top class journals. And but what there is no restriction as such. Whatever you use, you just be consistent in your draft in terms of your tense and voices is what I think would add to the beauty of the writing. So for a successful writing or publication, I would say these are the points which are strong points and a strong logical arguments about the importance of the study, and then a neat processing is what is very, very important. So whatever I have given you as a background, based on that, if you build and try to kind of put the thoughts together, you will say that when you try to do an academic writing, when you try to do a research, it has to, and for it to be successful, getting published, it requires very, very strong logical arguments about the importance of this study, why it is important, and then a very neat processing of the data and selection of methods and things like that. So, for example, what is the topic of the study? Why is it important? Why should the readers care about this topic at all? Not knowing how it hurts if they don't know it. You have to be really, really clear about it. What is known about the topic, something that you try to figure out or give some historical background, or sometimes through the literature that you reflect. What is already known about the topic, what is not known, and what is not known but should be known. It's not that something that is not known, probably it should not be known, it is not important. But you have to highlight, hey, this is known, but this is not known, but this needs to be known, right? And that's where it would really be impactful. A research question that will address this gap of the knowledge. So that's where you will have to now formulate the research question. The moment you say, hey, this is not known, but this needs to be known, and therefore this is the research question that we are putting. And then you will develop the theoretical framework that will address that particular gap, and then you go and collect the data, select the appropriate analytical tools, research tools, techniques, and methods, which is very, very apt to the objective of your study. So, depending on what you are evaluating, what you are examining, accordingly, the method that you select or the tools that you use might differ. Different methods are very, very useful and suitable in different contexts. So you'll have to look at that. That would also come from the literature. Your literature, as you tell, would tell you that for these kind of research questions, so what is the suitable technique that you can use. So that is what something that you should know about, you should learn about, and then you should use that. And then once you have done your analysis, you have got your results, an effective articulation of results, including very, very concise presentation of the results. How better you can present your results instead of putting too many tables, all glutted and all spreading here and there, tables breaking, no proper captions of the table. You should probably do so many results, but try to present it in a beautiful manner that just a glance to the table or just a glance to the graph or the picture explains a lot about what you have done and what your findings are. So, an effective articulation of the result is very, very important. And then, of course, implications and contribution to the existing body of knowledge is something that you should highlight, that would really say this is how you are contributing and this is why your research is important, right? So these are some of the very, very important points about successful publishing. Now, what I'm thought is, now, since I've given you background of what is very, very necessary about academic research, now I'll consider a paper, a format of a research paper, and a structure or anatomy of a contemporary academic research paper. And then we'll take you through section wise of what are things that you should spend time on while you start. After you decided what idea is important, why it is important, and how to do that particular thing, and once you have processed the results, that's when it comes to writing part of it. And then when you start writing, there is a structure for most journals where you end up publishing your articles. So the structure needs to be known. And then, of course, you have to spend time on the structure. So, for example, when you talk about, the very first thing that you see in an academic paper, usually called this is an introduction. And in the introduction section, what happens is usually the introduction section of a research, in my opinion, should start with what you do instead of building the base and beating around the bush. It's better that you directly come to tell the readers, hey, this is what we do, right? They're interested in doing that. That's why they are reading your paper. And then you highlight your key contributions into the introduction sections. And this is what you do, and this is what we find. And of course, sometimes, when you don't have there are papers which have literature review sections separately, and then they will have, other sections separately. However, there are also research papers where you include the literature as a bridge. You include the literature into the introduction section to make some of your points, citing the prior research. And that is also a possibility. In that case, your citations are probably slightly more in your introduction section than your literature review. However, if you have exclusive literature review section, you have to really find out that you cite a lesser paper and do not overburden your introduction section with citations. You better keep them separate for literature review. In literature review section, many times people ask, hey, what are the kind of works that I should cite? Should I cite every single work that has been done into this area? Hey, that is humanly not possible. There are thousands of work probably or hundreds of work in every section, and it's beyond the possibility of a human to read all through. So what is very important is that very contemporary and closely associated works with what you are doing must be cited. However, it is not necessary that you cite every work that is there in it, right? That's at least in my opinion, that has worked. Once you write the introduction, and depending on whether you keep literature as a separate section or not, accordingly, then you write literature review. Then the important part is what is your data and what is the methodology. So data, what is the source of the data? It must be a reliable source of the data for your results to be accepted and generalizable. So you should cite the data source, tell the time period that the data belongs to, why you selected the time period that is selected, how does the time period matter for the research question that you have, and then you talk about after the data and the observations and the characteristics of the variables, construction of the variables, of what are the variables that you are using into your study and how they are measured, how they are constructed. After that, you talk about the methods. So data and methodology becomes important section, and in the method you tell what is the econometric technique, what is the research methods or mathematical tools that you are using to kind of complete your research. So that must be very suitable to the domain or to the kind of research question that you have. For example, if you look at in the financial world, some of the topic that I talked about while I was talking of contemporary research, such as when I'm talking about CSR and earnings management, and when I'm talking about mandatory dividend regulation, or probably when I'm talking about ESG engagement and does it impact which kind of firms are doing more ESG? Are they just the domestic firms or firms which are more having international operations because they have international community pressure to be visible and be concerned about society and the environment and all. So based on that, accordingly you can choose a method. For example, DID, difference in difference, is one of the method, is very often used by people to kind of evaluate things such as when you have a regulation and when you look at things prior to the regulation and after the regulation. Similarly, if there is a regulation such as mandatory dividend policy that we talked about, and you want to look at, hey, does it have a value impact or does it have a price impact? After this regulation, did the price, substantially increase or decrease because it has helped to reduce the information asymmetry in some manner? Then you can use something called an event study where you decide the date of the event as the date of the regulation, and then you look at the behavior of the price around that event before and after, and you compare it with the normal trends, and then you say, hey, there is an abnormality seen, and that abnormality is possibly due to the regulation that has come. So there are methods like event study method, difference in difference method. Panel regression is very often used into accounting and finance research, where you have cross section of data across time periods. You have several firms for many years. You pool all the data and then try to find a general estimate. That's where you can use fixed effects or random effects panel regression, and those estimates turn out to be reliable, of course. So what we are trying to say here is you have to be explaining the data. Here in the method section, you talk about data, and then you also have to talk about the suitable methodology that works for that particular data. After that, once you complete this, then you talk about, once your methods are selected, once your data is chosen, you analyze the data, you process the data, and then you talk about the results. The moment you talk about the results, as I said, the presentation of the result matters. How well you present the results, how concise the presentation is, and along with the presentation, as I said, the articulation of the results in the most efficient manner would also matter. But not only those things. Once you have presented the data and results, and once you have talked about or discussed the data, the results, it's also important to re-verify using alternate techniques sometimes for your results. to see or to verify whether your results are susceptible to change into the method or change into the proxy or not. Because if that is a phenomenon, if that is a pattern, then irrespective of the alternate method or alternate proxy that you use, the results should not substantially change. So that's what we call robustness of results. And sometimes you should the contemporary research, if you see, I don't see any paper which have not done the robustness results, because the robustness of the estimates is very, very important to show that, hey, what I'm reporting is not probably because the method that I have used, but it is the phenomena that exists. And therefore, even if I change the method to an alternate, even if I change the proxy to an alternate, then too the results hold true. So that's something that you see. Of course, you talk about alternate proxies, methods, and placebo tests. So how do you do that? You can talk about alternate proxies. You can include alternate methods. Sometimes you can do about a placebo test. Placebo test in the sense a false test. For example, let's say this year the regulation has been passed and you are trying to assess the impact of this regulation, and you have decided and modeled it, and you have come to the result. Now, can you also select, let's say, 2018 as the regulation date, and then evaluate the reprocess the data again and find the result? If your regulation was the causing factor, then you should not find exactly the same result for your year 2018. We call it a false regulation day, and then accordingly you can do the entire exercise of research again and find out if your results are consistent. Then probably it is not due to the regulation, but it is there into the data. You select any year, and the result is that. Right? So to prove causation, what is important is to prove causation, you will have to do a battery of robustness test using alternate proxies, methods, placebo test, so that you can be slightly affirmative about what you're saying, right? And probably the general applicability of those things. After that, once you're completed on the results, I would say you talk about the discussions where you go and talk about the results, you talk about central contribution that you are making and how those results are. What is the implication of those results to the various industry, maybe the market participants, to the regulators, what is the lesson that can be taken, or things like that. And then you provide the conclusion section, which is an important section into the study. Though I expect this conclusion section and probably the contemporary research, if you see, that's very, very precise, not restating everything that you have done. Keep it short and sweet, highlighting the key contributions of your study and findings. So that's how the structure of a paper. If you look at the anatomy of the paper here into the slide, it tells you about the strength of the argument or the quantum of the argument in every section here, probably, which starts larger with the introduction and gets shrinks smaller for literature, methods, and then starts again widening once you start discussing your own work, which is like results discussion, or in that way, right? Now, the anatomy that I have just discussed, which is about the structure of the paper, and I have given you an overview. I have created slides where I can give you some tips and also talk about this in details. Now, once you understand the entire structure, there are some tips about writing this complete structure, which belongs to entire body of the paper, and that is given by a fantastic scholar, Dr. John Corcoran. John Corcoran currently is a professor at Stanford University. He has been associated with Booth School of Business before, and he's a fantastic and quite renowned scholar into the field of economics, and of course he also works in financial markets and things of that sort. He has given some of the tips for organizing your successful academic paper or academic writing, and he has said these things, which I think is very, very important, and I'll read them for you to understand. For instance, he says that figure out one central and novel contribution of your paper. Do not add too many. The moment you start with the research, find out what is one central point that you want to contribute, and please follow that. Write this one paragraph around this line, and that should be concrete throughout the entire paper. So that one central theme should not be missing. It should not be too many themes given too less of importance. Second, he says, hey, speak to the point, come to the point and speak directly about what you have done. Because readers are busy and they are impatient. No reader ever reads the entire paper, to be honest, from start to finish. Readers skim, and you have to make your paper easy for skimming so that they are able to skim it successfully. So, talk about your basic results, articulate it well because most readers want to know what is your basic findings. Very few of them care about how is it different from others, which is one of the sections that you see in so many papers. And very few talk about what about the variable definition, different instruments, and etc. But many of them want to know about what is the basic result. And therefore, you should not delay it unduly in your writing, because by that time the readers might feel lost and he probably will give up on the reading of your paper. Right. He also says that do not start your introduction with a page and a half of the other literature. Your readers are most interested in figuring out what you do, not what others have done. They cannot start wondering if it's better than what others have done or not. First, they are interested in what this research actually adds to, what this research has to offer. And therefore, it's very important that you spend time on what you are doing or you are writing. Second, most of the readers don't know the existing literature, right? So probably you can give them some idea about it here, but you need not to talk about only the existing research. You better talk about your own research. Then, in the other part of the body of literature, he also suggests that follow the main results with graphs and tables. He says that probably this makes, deciphering the information much easier for the readers. You should show the main results, that gives you intuition showing how the main result is a robust feature of comparing stylized facts with the data. So the moment you put it in a form of graph, in a form of pattern, or in a form of picture, that becomes more intelligible and that becomes more clearly understandable. And then lastly, he talks about conclusion, where he says that, hey, conclusion should be short and sweet. Do not restate all your findings. Only focus on your central findings, right? You can, of course, include a short paragraph or, to acknowledge the limitations, suggesting implications beyond those of the paper, but keep it short. Don't write your grant related thing, application, and the plan of your future research and the things like that. Usually in good academic papers, though you will find that in some of these papers, but in your good academic journals, you don't find these sections or these things to be written very often, right? So these are some of the important tips on the body of on the body of entire research paper, particularly to the contemporary world, into the recent times. If you look at papers 30 years ago and now, the style has changed, and that's what you need to focus on. Now I'm going to talk about the structure of contemporary academic writing, and I'll take one point, every single point, and I'll tell you a bit deeper, or I'll dive a bit deeper about it. Though I've given you the bullet points, I'm pretty sure that certainly, if not if enough, that is certainly at least a considerable amount of information that you can use to carry out a research if you wish. So the introduction section, which is the first impression, and ideal if it is in a storytelling manner, where you kind of engage the reader from the very first thing. So you start with what you do, and then you establish the context of the research that you are doing. You go on and then you highlight what is already known into this field, and then what is the gap, why it needs attention, and then you go and show the relevance thereof, how you have approached, what are your findings and contribution. But please, structure it in a manner that it looks like you are reading a story. That's where the reader feels more engaged. Of course, in this section, some of the things that you should try to answer is, you should try to tell the purpose of the research question. You should briefly talk about the main content of your results. You should describe how your research fits and contributes to the current science. And usually, it sometimes you will find the introduction section ends with explaining that what is the next sections going to be, a description of how rest of the body of the research is constructed, but this is not necessary. Usually you find it, but not necessary of a section into a research paper. Your literature review, it uses primary literature used to summarize the current understanding, as you know, right? With a focus to your research question, of course, not everything. It should consist of relevant and important citations from the area, preferably from recent studies, but without ignoring the seminal works, because there are some of the classic works. If you are working into the area of capital structure, dividend policy, you cannot forget Modigliani and Miller, right? So it's that way. Or you are talking about something about agency costs, you cannot forget about Jensen, right? So that's what. So some of the seminal works you cannot escape, but at the same time, you need not to cite every single work, and you have to cite supporting and contrasting evidence for your argument in separate but successive paragraphs so that you give a good understanding of literature. However, introduction should not be necessarily loaded with citation. I have said it before, particularly if literature review section is exclusive, right? So these are some of the things that you know. If you look at this is a generalist understanding, but there are academic research published on how to write the introduction section. So, for example, Swills and Feek in 2004, they published a paper where they talked about move analysis, where they say, hey, you should take set of moves to write your introduction. And those set of moves he explains like here, move one, move two, move three. And of course, when you read the entire thing that I have presented here, you would say this is quite consistent with what you have told us. You have to set the research territory by showing what is the general research, why this general research idea is important. Then you show some of the review of literature, existing work. Then you establish the niche by telling what is the weakness into the existing studies and what needs to be addressed, what is the gap, and then you develop and occupy this niche by saying this is what you are going to work on, and this is what your research question is given the context, and this is what your principal findings are. So this is how a move analysis can help you to develop a good paper. I have given that paper into the citation referencing. If you are interested, you can of course go and look at the paper. Then we talk about the second important thing. So I talked about introduction, and assuming introduction includes research or review or literature review or maybe exclusive section of literature review. Thereafter, you go to data and methods. Now, this is usually around your 50 to 20% of your paper, where you talk about how you carried out your research. So first you talk about what you do, and after talking about what you do, now you are saying how you do what you do. How you do what you do, talk about what is the process and procedure of the experiment that you are doing, what are the analytical statistical technique that you are using, and what is the reason thereof, why those techniques are suitable. You may talk about the advantage of a method or a model over the other compared to what you are using vis-a-vis what the existing literature has used, why it is better the model that you are using, and things like that you have to explain. You have to talk about what is the sample that you are studying, how did you prepare the sample, how did you decide on the sample, and maybe you can share the data descriptors for the audience to have a great sense of what data is involved into this study. You can talk about the various measurement of variables. So the moment you have data, you have collected the data, and to answer the specific research question, you require a set of variables, and those variables needs to be measured. And therefore, you can go and talk about what is the measurement of the variable. So, the recent trend is very often those variables need to present it into a tabular form. So there would be a table, variables table, and in the variables table, you will talk about the description of all the variables, what they may, how they measure, how they are proxied, or how they are constructed. So, for example, let's say I'm talking about profitability of a firm. Am I taking PAT? Am I taking PBIT? Am I taking PB EBITDA? So looking at, they are different. One is operating profit measure, one is net profit measure, one is including the cash. So the cash basis, operating profit measure, excluding the non-cash amount and things like that. So depending on what your objective is, what kind of operational profits that you are concerned with, or what kind of performance that you are concerned with, accordingly your proxy might change, and that you have to very clearly explain in your paper. And then you list the method in the order you wish to present the result. Usually, you select a set of methods, that what is you are applying first and second. In fact, there should be a consistency of the order in the manner that you present your method and in the manner that you present your results. So that's what you can do about the methods. And the result is the section which largely explains what did you find, what are your findings. So that's where you go and talk about, and you explain about the important findings that you have from the research question. Now, these findings can be sometimes tabular presentation, it could be pictorial presentation of empirical results, and things like that. And it's substantiate with empirical observations. So what you do is you write those estimates, you go and explain those estimates, and then it is further added or probably enhanced by the set of robustness tests that you do on the estimates to say that, hey, what we are saying is actually happening in any way that you test it, right? And that's what adds to the credibility of the results that you are reporting. And that's very, very, robustness was, I don't think it was very much there, and it was too many times used in the research which was published 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but now it's without robustness, probably it's very, very difficult to sell your paper or publish your paper, or actually add reliability to your paper. So that's something that has become very, very important with time. You have move analysis even here by, so in case of methods, you have to state the main findings in the order and turn the hypothesis and methods used. You have to also, you can report the subsidiary findings and the hypothesis and methods used to kind of explore those things. And then you have to talk about results, where you go, and now finally, so this is where you construct hypothesis, whereas this is where you talk about whether you are into the favor, where your results are in the favor or they are in against your hypothesis, and therefore whether you are accepting or rejecting. And then lastly, once you are done with your results, you add up to the discussions and conclusions, where we talk about what are the findings meaning, what are the interpretation of the findings that you have got, how they are in comparison to the existing work, whether they are consistent, whether they are different, and if they are different, what probably is the reason that they are different than the research conducted in the other context. And if at all you see something is startling or very, very interesting as an observation, you better highlight that and talk about why it might be evident. You can talk about what are the implications of this study, to whom does it have more implications, such as, is it regulator, is it investor, is it the market, is it the exchange, to whom, depending on the context of the study that you have selected. Accordingly, it could be more useful to somebody and less useful to somebody else. So that is something that you should explain while you are doing this. And then finally, we'll talk about, the moment you talk about the discussions and conclusions, sometimes they're not necessarily, sometimes you have to highlight the limitations of the study, that it is possible that, let's say, you have used a domestic sample, and maybe your domestic rules and regulations are such that your results are not having a general applicability across countries. If you think so, given your research, then you should better highlight. And you can also suggest improvements, that in what way, maybe by using a superior methodological technique, which you were not able to, or using a better sample, which you were not getting data for, or a better setting, maybe in a different context, the results should be evaluated. So those are some of the things that if you highlight, probably that adds to the impression of the work that you are doing. Even in that case, you see that there are moves associated. So you have to restate the findings and accomplishments. You have to show the fitness with the existing findings, you have to state the limitations, interpret and explain the counterclaims if at all it is, and then recommend the future, implication and recommendation for the future research. According to the move analysis, also, what you see is most of the items are very, very consistent. So this is, if you look at the moment I started talking about these things, from them to now, if you see what we have done is we have looked at why research is important, then we have looked at what it takes, what are some of the general principles that you should follow, and then we have went to the various structured sections of a research paper, and we have spent time understanding what are some of the key ingredients under every section of this research paper, and what you should be careful about, and how you should try to address some of the important concerns that a reviewer or that a good research that a reviewer would look for, or that a good research must constitute. So that is what we have studied so far. So this is entirely on the development of the main body of the paper that we have so far talked about, right? Of course, in the process, we talked about how to look at the contemporary topics, what are some of the contemporary topics that you can look at, how to figure out the contemporary methods, and of course, how to address those contemporary questions with suitable methods and particular set of the samples and data that are relevant to answer such a research question. Now, what I'm going to talk about is the other important ingredients. So far, most of the times, what we were talking about is the body of the research paper, mostly, and what it constitutes, and what are the things that you should be concerned about. But now we are going to talk about some of the other aspects. So one of the important aspects that I would say is title of the study. Sometimes these are a careful or a thoughtfulness to these things probably would help you to sell your paper well. So the first was part of the article that an editor reviews or reviewer or the reader reads is the title, which should sense the content of the paper. The title should be in sync with what your research is trying to achieve. It should give some meaning to, probably just by listening to the title, the author can make out, okay, what this research could be at. Right? It should be easy to understand. It should be intriguing to the readers. It should be non-technical. It should be preferably short, is what are some of the ideal characteristics, I would say, that a particular title of a research should be. For instance, title has several categories. There are titles that announce a very general subject, right? They are not that interesting. They are simply talking about, hey, they are setting a context. This is what we are providing. So, for example, as a pre-writing, the relation between thinking and feeling. Very clear title with a very, very particular context. Price impact of adoption of Ind AS. Now you are saying those companies, Ind AS has been applied, Ind AS has been applied in the phased manner, company has adopted at different times. The moment a company was eligible to adopt and has adopted, what is the price impact of adoption? Was there a price impact into the market? Did the investor react to such a stock differently into the market? So what we are saying is very clearly, the title itself tells you what probably this research is all about, right? That's first. The second set of title could be that title can emphasize on the methodology that you use. And all those kind of titles are very, very contemporary into the academic world. So I'm trying to give you some kind of title that you can spend time on while you have completed a research. So for example, title that emphasize the methodology. You can see some of the titles I've given examples like peeking inside the minds of tourism or tourists using a novel web analytics approach. Now, this is a research which focuses on a particular set of methodology that is probably very, very useful and probably would give a chance for acceptance to the journals. The renewable energy consumption, environment degradation nexus of top 10 polluted countries, fresh insights from quantile on quantile regression approach. Again, a title which has a focus on the method. They are, of course, evaluating some of the economic concerns, but then they are more focused to particular set of methods. Then there are titles that bid for attention by using startling or effective openings. Now, so kind of just by listening to the title, you feel like, "Arey, this is something interesting. This is probably something very, very amazing. Let us read that." For example, let's say, when Black and Scholes wrote their first paper, Fisher Black wrote the first paper, particularly in the idea of futures and options. His one of the paper that he studied is Facts and Fantasy in the Use of Options. Now, by reading the title, you're saying, "Hey, what are they saying about options? Facts and fantasy." Let us read that. This sounds interesting. I have authored a paper a couple of years ago where I looked at when if you know the options in Indian market, earlier the stock options used to be American, but and index options has always been European on our market. So the American options were converted to European options, I think in 2000, around 2010-11, if you look at, and that's when I made a study where going European from American, does style matter? So where I was talking of the option style and how does it matter for the trading intensity and trading behavior of the market participant in terms of volume, liquidity, and other things. So such a catchy title. Sometimes you don't know much about what they probably are doing, but the title interesting. Going European from American, does the style matter? Hey, what are they doing? Can we read that? This sounds interesting. That's the idea. The paper like, "Do you ride an elephant and never tell them that you are a German?" The experience of a British, Asian, Black, and overseas student teacher in the UK. Now, just by reading the title, you feel like, hey, there is something interesting into this title. Should we probably read this? So these are the set of titles that sometimes are created. And then there could be titles that indicate some controlling question. Titles with question mark. To pay or not pay, what matters the most for dividend payment? They are saying, okay, they're asking a question and probably they're trying to, answer this puzzling question. Do bank appointed directors affect corporate cost holding? We are trying to see that whether the moment a director is appointed by the bank, who is the lender to the company, do they affect the corporate cash holding? Because now there is a banker on the board. Can you say that the corporates will feel like, hey, I can get the cash as and when I want? So for funding requirements, I do not need to accumulate cash. And does it impact the cash holding of the company negatively? Now, with that perspective, this people, we can say, hey, does CSR, mandatory CSR law encourage earnings management? Right? That could be a question mark. And that could be an interesting thing. And these are the papers, and these are the kind of titles which have got larger acceptance, in my view, into the academic publishing and academic world. So I'm just telling you the kind of titles that probably, based on the context of the study that you choose, you can design and you can have. Of course, then talk about abstract. Abstract is, I think, is the first thing that you see on the paper, but I would say it is the last thing that you should write into the paper after completing your entire research, because now you know the nitty and the very good summary of the research. So abstract is nothing, but it provides what is an abstract and what should it accomplish is a concise summary, and most important information of the study is what you present here. It needed in order to provide the basic idea of the paper for content in the database search. So it tells you what actually is the basic idea that you evaluate and what is the concise summary of everything that you have done. It seduces readers to spend time. Now, your abstract should be such that just reading the abstract, the reader should say like, hey, I need to read this entire paper. This looks interesting. This is a good summary. They have done something very interesting, their findings are very, very good. And probably that should engage and seduce your reader to read your work. You should draw the attention of the journal interest towards publishing the manuscript just by, writing a good abstract. You have a good chance that you can let the editor go through the part of the paper, and probably you have a good chance to go through at least the first stage and maybe the second stage as well. Now, what are the type of abstracts? So you know the importance of abstract now. What are the types of abstracts that is written or that is accepted in contemporary research? And some of the types of abstract that you see, some of them are descriptives. So descriptives are usually they are the teasers of the work and the type of information and the findings, usually 100 or fewer words. and there'll be very, very few sentences detailing the facts and analysis of the study, just a couple of sentences. Similarly, you may have something called structured. Usually, if you look at the Emerald as a publisher, they'll ask you very, very structured. They'll label the section. What is the objective? What is the methodology? What are the findings? What is the originality? And related to those sections, probably you are writing 50 to 75 words in every section, making some 200 plus, words into the entire abstract. Or you can have an abstract which is more of informative, where the length of the abstract is certainly slightly larger, and you kind of spend proportionately across the body of the study about the key facts. That could include your what was the idea, what is the method that you are using, what is the data you are using, what is the finding that you get, and what does it imply. So all of those sections slightly in couple of sentences. So that the length goes to probably 250 to 300 words in that case. So these are some of the kind of abstracts. Sometimes you have to check from the journal that you are targeting that what kind of abstract they require. If there is no restrictive criteria, you can choose any. However, some of the journals may want you have to give a descriptive or you have to give a structure one. For example, the paper that I got the award for from ICI, that was a paper which was having a descriptive abstract. We had to present the abstract of the paper in 100 words, where we were evaluating how the ESG engagement of the firms might lead to earnings management, loading the earnings management of the company, because environmentally, concerned company, they are ethical companies, they are concerned companies, and therefore they would not engage into the earnings manipulation. Is something that what we have shown in that work. The moment we talk about the important sections of academic writing, academic research, and publishing, one thing that is very, very essential to know that, absolutely unacceptable thing, which is plagiarism. Plagiarism in academic research is absolutely unacceptable. It is literally the theft, considered to be theft of somebody else. What is plagiarism? You say plagiarism is the use of the ideas, quotations, pieces, pictures, tables, graphs of other work without referring to the original author. It's not that you cannot use them to kind of substantiate on your ideas or build on your idea, but then you have to cite the author. You cannot do it without citing the author. That is considered to be theft and absolutely not acceptable. It is related to integrity and intellectual property, and therefore you lose the respect if you are a scholar not doing the same. It holds you accountable for your honesty and quality of the work that you do. The rights of intellectual property must be respected, right, in the world of academic publishing and research. And plagiarism is writing or the correct, even in source material also, whether intentional or unintentional, people cannot verify it. So you should certainly, ideas or concept that you get from any source, you should include in your work, including your own previously submitted work. If you don't do that, then that too is a plagiarism. Now, once this entire task is complete, I must tell you that I'm inching towards the completion of my presentation. Probably I'll take maybe 5-10 minutes more, where I'll talk about responding to the referees. The moment you are done with your paper, development of your paper, and you submit it, then the other headache is either you get a rejection letter, or maybe it gets into a review, and then you get something called revise and resubmit, where you can revise the work based on the comments that you have received from the reviewers, and then you can submit it again. You say refereeing is a lottery. Referee comments and recommendations, it can vary. Sometimes, what you think is a good work may not be good work in the eyes of the others, and vice versa. So in that sense, it's a lottery, and you might get a rejection later. And what do you do when you particularly get a rejection later? I find an interesting quote by Warren in 2000 in one of his book that he writes. He said, when you are the recipient of an unexpected rejection letter, don't sit down and fire off a letter to the editor. In fact, he says that talk it over with your friends, indulge in intemperate verbal expression to your colleague, write a letter to the editor that says exactly what you want to say, But then he says, and then delete it. Do not try to justify to your editor. By doing this, you can satisfy your own, grump that you might have got developed due to the rejection later. But then do not write it to the editor. In fact, the first thing is you should calm down, take a week or two, do not respond to it immediately. I mean, do not respond at all to the editor, but do not respond to this rejection even immediately. Give it a couple of time, develop some thought, and eventually you may again see why the referee has rejected. You might get some more information, some more ideas to revise, and then you can revise your manuscript, and then probably you can send it to some other journal. Sometimes you also send it without changes, but I would say the moment it is a rejected paper, it's better that you give a thought to it, include some of the ideas based on the comments received, if at all there is a comment received, and then probably submit it to the different journal. If you are luckier and the editor asks you to revise and submit, you can of course take the opportunity to improve your paper, provide answers to the concerns raised, not necessarily that everything that the reviewer is saying you need to address. No. Sometimes you have to give intellectual argument of why you are not doing what you are not doing, why it does not make sense. But you have to be polite. You cannot say this does not make sense. You can say, hey, what you are saying probably is okay, but what we are trying to do is this, and therefore what you are saying does not fit in the context that I am doing, and therefore we choose to not to address this demand. Instead, we think this is how it is taken care of, or something like this. You can respond to the editor without offending him. Once your paper is accepted after revision is submitted, then usually they send it for proof checks. So I'm telling you now the process. So proof checks in the sense, once you have completed the research, they'll send you, hey, this is the final version that we have accepted. Do you want to do some minor changes in terms of your typesetting, in terms of the style of presentation, in terms of authors ordering, and things like that. And once you send the proofs, by approving the proof that okay, fine, this is the final format and this is how it would appear, we are okay with this. You don't have to make any major changes into the paper then, but slight modifications in terms of setting, presentation, and others can be done. That's when it will always be helpful to return the proof to indicate those changes that are essential and not that are optional, and then probably you publish. Of course, the moment you publish, you know that there are journal quality lists. Most of the institutions they follow top quality. The best of the quality is Financial Times FP50. Then you have ABDC, Australian Business Dean's Council list, which gets revised very often. It has four categories. You have Academic Journal Guide, AJG, which gives you, also called sometimes ABS. It gives you Association of Business Schools. It gives you again 5 parameters on which the ranking is done. You have Thomson Reuters, which gives you Thomson rating with impact factor. It has another 4 classification. There is an overlap of journals present into these three things. In most cases, they are into the same ranking, but sometimes it could be that in one case it is in 4, but in this case it is in A star and things like that. But depending on which kind of quality list you are publishing, actually higher is the quality, better is the impact factor, and better is the acceptance into the wider community. Right? Impact factor is very, very important. It is usually impact factor number of citations in the previous 2 years. It is measured by that. It does not reflect the quality necessarily, because it does not adjust for self citation, and review articles usually get higher citations, but then too, the rankings are very, very important. Of course, other than these popularly followed ranking, there are rankings by other esteemed institutions. For example, some of the IIMs have their own ranking of journals. Scopus is another index where thousands of publishers are listed and some people publish. So these are some of the quality lists. They are not mutually exclusive, but they are very, very important to be followed to establish a credential into the kind of journals where you are publishing your work. How do you target the journal? Of course, you have to look at the readership of the journal, the theme of the journal, where they publish the paper, what is the theme of your own research. And then, of course, you can look at the issues, the acceptance rate, and other factors. If there is a submission fee, because particularly in accounting and finance journals, many journals they ask for submission fees where to meet after their operating expenses, and probably sometimes they pay the reviewers as well, and they are many a times they are very high fees, and after submitting your paper, if your paper is not good, you get the desk reject. That's one of the biggest hard shock that you receive, and therefore you should read the instruction to author section, and then you select the journal in case it substantially fits in terms of the themes, and you are able to pay the journal fees if at all they are accepted. And you can of course also verify their quality by looking at the indexing and impact factor. Collaboration works very much. For me, collaboration has worked very much. And even the collaborative research have got wider acceptance. It's been seen that the literature establishes that collaborated papers get fewer revisions and more chances of publication. And probably part of the reason is because the moment multiple people are working on a paper, the paper gets refined at multiple places. And everybody is contributing. So the chances of single manipulation, obscure things happening, and vague things happening are lesser. And probably that's one of the reasons why such paper gets more citations, more acceptance, and fewer revisions. But I do not guarantee that collaborative writing will lead to higher likelihood of publication. In your case, maybe. Of course, the quality is ultimate thing, and that is something that would be the lead indicator of what kind of research that you are doing. So I think I've given you enough in terms of you know what is in terms of academic research, from the journey starting from what is research, why it is important, what are some of the key ingredients, what is the structure of the paper, what are the various sections of the structure of the paper, what you need to be careful about, and then other than the body of the paper, what are the some of the other factors that you can spend time on and probably get better results, and then the entire process of publishing, some starting from the journal selection to submission to the quality assessment and everything. So with that, I think my time limit is almost over. I think I've taken some 87 minutes, given 90 minutes. I think I'm done as far as my section is concerned. And as I was told, so thank you very much for this session. Thank you for having me. I feel really privileged to be a part of this session for research, professionals at ICAI. Thank you very much to the research committee and everyone associated here. And I would be glad if there are questions to be asked. I was told that that would be in, I think, text mode, so I would be happy to see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajesh sir, for your kind session. And
Yeah, Rajesh ji, it was a nice session, and we have the presence of my chairman, CA Anuj Goyal ji, and vice chairman,
Namaste, sir.
CA Umesh Sharma sir.
Hi.
So it is right time that after this wonderful deliberation, now my chairman and vice chairman both will be there to guide the honorable audience. Although both of them are the well-known face for the fraternity, but I think for you and others, those who are new to this, somebody from academia also joined. So I would take this privilege to introduce my chairman. My chairman, C. Anuj Goyalji, is the member of all the three institutes. He is qualified chartered accountant, company secretary, and course accountant. He is in the council of ICAI, the apex governing board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Sixth term, 18 years he is serving in the council. Prior to that, he was the chairman of the Central India Regional Council. And before that, he served in the branch, Ghaziabad branch of CRC of ICAI. It is a wonderful coincidence that he's a member of all the three institutes, as well as he lead the profession of all three institutions at the branch level. He was the elected chairman of ICSI, elected chairman of ICWI, and of course, the Arm of Affairs of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. We have another personality, my vice chairman, CEO Umesh Sharma ji, who has credit youngest, still he's young, is credit youngest chairman of Aurangabad branch of WSA of ICI, and he was in WSC, Western India Regional Council, and then he is now in the council, the apex body of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So although I have very little exposure with Umesh Sharma sir, but I think 9-10 months I have already spent with him. I learned a lot, and now I take privilege to invite Umesh Sharma sir to address the audience. Please.
Yes, thank you, Amit ji. Welcome to our chairman Anuj Goyal sir, who is working very hard from last 16 years, as rightly pointed out by Amit ji. And thanks to Rajesh Pathak ji, the speaker of today. And when I was listening to you, sir, it was a very nice, Rajesh ji, to know the intricacies of research and its publication challenges and what to do, what not to do. And you have extensively covered the topic. I think there may be few questions. So after that, we will discuss more. Till that time, over to you, Amit ji.
Yeah, Chairman sir, by the time we take some questions, prior to that, I would request to grace the occasion with your blessing words, your guiding words.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Amit Agrawal ji, our Honorable Secretary of the Research Committee. I welcome Rajesh Pathak ji, our professor of very, very prominent IIM Raipur, the capital city of course of the Chhattisgarh. And of course, we are having CEO Umesh Sharma ji, who is a very, very prominent Central Council member from the western part of the country, from Aurangabad, and is a expert of the GST. So we are really fortunate that we are having the presence of Rajesh Pathak ji, Umesh Sharma ji. And let me tell you, the research is so important, not only for the CA profession, but for the society, for the nation. And if India is has to progress, I think if the India has to develop, research is the foremost and most important thing, because the development takes place only after research and development. It is never development and research. And the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India are the best suited professionals to really do something very, very concrete in the research work. And it is our endeavor to see that how we can train the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India who have passed one of the toughest examinations of the world, so that their capacity, their knowledge can be used, can be utilized, not only for the CA profession, for the development of the CA profession, but also for the development of the trade and industry, and in turn for the development of the nation. And I'm really very happy that Rajesh Pathak ji has chosen to educate our members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India particularly. However, this webinar may be open even for non-chartered accountants also. But I'm of the firm view that the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India are supposed to be handholded for the research activities, so that their potential can be used for the trade and industry, for the nation. And we, of course, we have taken n number of initiatives during last 3 years. We are the pioneer in ICI International Research Award. You must be aware, Pathak ji, that 2 years back, this is consecutively third year, we come out with ICI International Research Award, in which practically from each and every part of the world, we are having the nominations. And the IFAC president, International Federation of Accountants president, was the chairman of the jury in the very first year, as well as in second year, and consecutively for the third year. And practically, it is the only international research award initiated by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. In addition to that, we have come out with the ICI Research Project Scheme 3 years back. In this ICI Research Project Scheme, we are reimbursing up to 10 lakhs of rupees per project. And chartered accountant, as well as other educationists or other professionals, can very well be the part of this ICI Research Project Scheme. And from each and every part of the world, the researchers have shown the interest and deliver the goods, which is not only good for the CA Institute, for the profession, but also for various government departments, various central and state governments. And in turn, it is really very good for the nation. In addition to that, ICI Doctoral Scholarship Scheme, in which we are trying to handhold the young researchers, in which we are having the provision of 50,000 rupees per month for 3 years to those eligible researchers who want to do the doctorate on full-time basis. So we are trying our level best to see that how we can really do something very, very concrete in the field of research. And you will be very happy to know that research committee is the oldest technical committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. It came out in 1955. All other technical committees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, practically the research committee was the mother committee of all those technical committees. We are having ICI Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which was initiated in 1958. And it's having great, I will say, craze amongst the top most industries. And this time also, we got up to today, we got around 200 nominations for the ICI Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting, popularly known as Best Presented Award for the Best Presented Accounts. So I'm quite confident with the support of the dignitaries like Rajesh Pathak ji and our very, very worthy Vice Chairman, CEO Umesh Sharma ji, who is contributing like anything for the cause of the profession. We will be certainly in a position to really do something very, very concrete for the cause of the profession, for the cause of the nation. We are having very, very dedicated and devoted and competent Secretary of the Research Committee, Dr. Amit Agrawal ji, who is trying his level best 24/7 to see that how something very, very concrete can be done by the Research Committee, by the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, by the educationists for the furtherance of the objectives of the Research Committee. I will not be taking your further time as we are having a lot number of queries, and we look forward for a greater contribution of the dignitaries like Pathak ji on the platform of the Research Committee, on the platform of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Amit Agrawal ji.
Thank you, Chairman, sir, for your guiding words and giving insight about the initiative taken by the Research Committee during last 3 years and the legacy of our Excellency in Financial Reporting Award. Chairman, sir, I would like to submit that we have 262 entries as of now, the highest entries till date. Since 1958, we have this Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. And this year, under the able guidance, rightly said by you, Vice Chairman, I would add my Vice Chairman as my the able guidance of my leader of the committee, the chairman of the research committee, the team of both chairman and vice chairman, we could do that. We have broken all the records, and the highest number of entries we have received till date. Various initiative has been taken, but time is a constant, so I would not take much time for because already my chairman has touched upon the initiative, but there is a long list of the initiative taken by my chairman and vice chairman. So to start with the questions, my chairman would be taking questions of the audience. Before that, I would like to take one personal question. Because it's my curiosity. I did my PhD in 2005. I have some curiosity on the research. Every research webinar, I have my own questions. So, Rajesh ji, the topic of this webinar is contemporary academic research, challenges and contribution. Do you think there is any difference in contemporary academic research, challenges and contribution to commercial research?
Okay. Before I answer the question, let me take a couple of minutes to thank CA Anuj Goyal ji and the Vice Chairman Umesh Sharma ji for being there and having me for this session. I really feel honored to talking to such illustrious career people, people with brightest minds, I think, of the country and the world, and of course, having fantastic career. So thank you very much. I really love this association. To your question, I think, the commercial research is on several parameters. If I look at the processes wise, things have to be done more or less in similar way, but the objectives are quite different. The objectives in the sense of the stakeholders that an academic research addresses vis-a-vis the stakeholders that a commercial research addresses is very, very different. I mean, here the objective is the moment you do a commercial research, you have a very clear cut, requirements, what you want to address, and accordingly that commercial substance is present into that. However, academic research is away from commercial aspects, and therefore it addresses slightly wider concerns, but then applicability is smaller compared to the commercial, where it ends up answering the question very precisely compared to the academic research. So in that is how I see these two things to be slightly different. However, there is a lot of commonality in the manner that you address the question.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh ji. Chairman sir, would you like to take some questions?
Yeah. So thank you, Pathak ji. We are having one query from CA Arvind Malik from Noida. How to finalize the right subject for the research?
Okay, so right subject, I don't know whether he means the right topic or whether he means the right research question. So subject could be, of course, your area of interest. It could be in the domain of accounting. I think if he's a CA, I'm pretty sure his interest would be more into the domain of accounting compared to, but it can be into the field of finance, economics as well. So that is what subject, by what I understand. But then when we talk about the topic, which is what I think is what he means here, is I think as far as adding to the existing body of knowledge is concerned, things which have been beaten till death and did not deserve attention. So things which are contemporary, which are emerging through the regulations, through the changing trends into the market, due to the adoption of technology and things like that, probably those are the places where if we start putting more intellectual efforts, probably we'll be answering many questions and adding to the knowledge of the society as well. So when I say topics, I would say coming from the illustrious background of chartered accountants, I would say look at the regulations across the domains of taxation, auditing, probably financial reporting, probably something interesting, and the impact analysis of that would really help both the regulators and the users or the other stakeholders around the country. right? So that's what I think would be important.
Yeah, thank you. Then we are having one query of R. Ravi from Bengaluru. Is there a set of defined assignments that a CA could understand research in? Will there be any time frame and stipend or scholarship from ICI? I think some part I can respond.
Yeah, right.
That as far as the research is concerned, ICI is very keen to see that how we can support to everyone, including chartered accountant. So if we want to go for any research project, then we are having the provision for the reimbursement of expenditure up to 10 lakhs of rupees. And in addition to that, if one want to go for the doctoral, for the doctorate, for the PhD on full-time basis, then for the eligible candidates, there can be a provision of 50,000 rupees per month for 3 years. In addition to that, if some research has to be undertaken by a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India on case-to-case basis, we can be having the provision of certain honorarium even to those chartered accountants as far as this thing is concerned. But I think the complete answer will be given by Rajesh Pathak ji. I will once again repeat what Mr. Ravi want to ask. Is there a set of defined assignments that a CA could understand research in? And will there be any time frame and stipend or scholarship from ICI? I think the second part I have already answered. And as far as the ICI research project scheme is concerned, the time frame is 6 months. We are supposed to complete the research project after the green signal is given by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Within 6 months, we are supposed to complete the research project. Over to Pathak ji.
Thank you, sir. So, as you rightly mentioned, sir, I mean, as the ICI already provides the research funding for the several projects that a CA can undertake, however, even across institutions. So the straightforward answer is yes. Are there specific assignments? Yes, there are several institutions, including the governments of different states and sometimes central government, which comes with the specific assignments and projects for which they want people to work, submit the project report, and of course, I think ICI and the other agencies also fund them. The similar things are available at our institute IIMs as well. And particularly researchers like us are given all the free hands that if we want to engage with people on research with esteemed institution on particular assignment, we can engage. So are there specific assignments? Yes, they are very much into the market. However, even other than the specific assignments, based on the development into the markets and the trends, we can also pick our own assignments and work if need be. And to be honest, sir, I would like to submit, say, Anuj sir, to your institution that I particularly, I think finance domain particularly, and even probably I am Raipur community. For research, if at all there is somebody who is willing to engage, I think we would be glad to holding hands together and probably walk that path. So.
Yeah, Chairman sir.
Thank you.
Chairman sir, with your permission, I would like to answer the first part. In addition to what Mr. Rajesh Pathak has already told. Sir, under your able guidance, 2 years back, we have initiated one training program, 5-day training program for our chartered accountants, that to understand what is research, the fundamental of research. Then we started advance on research methodology, the 5-day training program. So I think the set of knowledge one want to know the what is research, how it is conducted. Some capsule program was designed for 3-day, 5-day, and one book, one publication is also there, the fundamental of research methodology by ICI. So that book can be helpful, and it is available on the research committee website, freely downloadable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amit ji. Next query is from CA Anuj Kumar Ganguly, my very good friend and the past chairman of Patna branch. What are the new challenges with the current trend that is investigating agency? I will repeat, what are the new challenges with the current trend that is investigating agency?
Okay, so I think if I don't know if I have understood the question properly, but to be honest, I would say my expertise, my main area where I work largely in research is relates to accounting and finance. I have not worked on research for investigating agencies. I don't think I would be the right person to answer this question, but this question deserves attention, and I think probably we can together, or maybe you can write an email, and probably I'll try to figure out what are the kind of research that investigating agencies are engaged in, if I've understood the question properly. Or maybe I think somebody else or one of you could answer this.
Yeah, Chairman sir, if you allow me, I would like to answer this query.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Both chairman and vice chairman, as you are aware that institute has taken up one study. One research project has been taken up by the institute with the Sardar Patel University, Government University, Police University. Thin line difference between professional negligence and criminal act. So if I correctly understood the crux of the query of the member, that what are new challenges for the investigating agency. This is one part, that for our members' perspective and the investigating agencies' perspective, what they think and what actually happens. Sometimes there is a perception for professional negligence, they are unable to distinguish between the professional negligence and the criminal act. So this is one of the challenge, and that is required much more research in that domain, so that they can the research in that domain will help the investigating agencies in performing their duties. Chairman sir, if you can recall, last year we had one study on the money laundering through multi-state cooperative societies, and we had series of the training program for EOW officers. One of the outcome of the study was the report as well as the training programs for the investigating agencies. Our research committee has taken one study that these are the flaws in the process, and we trained the investigating officers that how they should investigate. So both way, to help the investigating officers to understand their role and responsibility, they should not be misleading by perception. They should be very particular in the process, and they must understand what is the role of the professional in while they are discharging their duties, and as well as we help them to understand the whole process to investigate. So how the multi-state cooperative society, this is one of the domain. So these are the area where more research can be done, where the actual crux can be understood. What is the process? Where is the mistake? Whether it is intentional, it is a procedural mistake, or third thing, my colleague CA Neha Bansal and other team members, last year we came out with one publication, compendium on DC cases. Based on that case studies, we are trying our level best to make our member understand these are the cases where members held guilty. So please avoid these mistakes. Sometimes it is malified, sometimes it is professional negligence, sometimes it is error. So we have that compendium. So if I correctly understood, I think we have responded that query. Next, sir.
Dr. Amit Agarwalji, then Mr. Anil Madhavan from Chennai. Sir, some of the international norms on these are too stringent that Indian requirements. Any thoughts to elucidate if possible?
So can I ask? Can I ask you to repeat the question? I missed
Some
the
of
voice
the
in between.
international norms
Uh-huh.
on these are too stringent than Indian requirements. Any thoughts to elucidate it, like, if possible?
There's norms in what aspect? I don't know. Is it with respect to financial markets? Is it with respect to the domain of accounting? I don't know. In what respect these norms are being discussed, or international trade? I don't know. In what respect he's talking about?
Actually, when he was discussing something at that time, I think in between he must have something in his mind. Dr.
Okay.
Amit Agarwalji.
Sir, if I correctly understood his query, some international organization or internationally, globally, there are some practices like in Australia, there is a research ethics committee.
Mhm.
Before commencing any research, one has to undergo through the process taking approval of that research ethics committee. So that way he may be feeling that it's
Okay.
very stringent. There are some disclosures, some norms, some procedures are to be undertaken before. Today I was reading one article in Times of India that UGC has relaxed some norms of to PhD scholars for
Assistant
it's
professor,
not
right?
now
Yes.
mandatory to publish their paper in peer-reviewed journal. So
Right.
earlier, somebody may take it as a very tough norm, but some appeal was made and UGC considered. So I think he is talking about these norms, but it's vary
Yeah.
from university to university. It vary from country to country.
Now, in
But
that context, we
in
need.
nutshell, one
Sorry.
should be very honest and ethical in the research.
True. In that context, that's what you rightly mentioned, that in that context, it is very important to understand why norms are brought. Norms are brought because people have experienced that there are abuse of the existing system. So in case you start doing anything which is supposed to be developing knowledge, and it may be harmful to many. So in that case, there are norms that vary according to the ethical practices and the level of ethical behavior across countries, which we know that it varies, right? And therefore, the norms are there. Institutional norms are there, to be honest. I mean, I think you were very rightly mentioning, sir, there are institutional norms. There are journals, when you submit your papers, they ultimately ask for ethics code, right? Related check mark that you have followed entire ethical principles. So that varies, and we have to stick to that, and we have to follow that. It's as it is.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh ji. Now, keeping into the time consideration, now I would request my Vice Chairman, C. Umesh Sharma ji, for formal vote of thanks.
Yes, thanks, Amit ji, for giving me chance to present the formal vote of thanks. Actually, when we listen to Rajesh ji on the particular topic of research, I think he has a very vast knowledge, and we need to discuss more and more with him. Thanks to you, sir, for your knowledge and your attitude toward making research much more better and going into the core of the subject, because you are update of the subject in the current recent matters also, like in today's times of India, and you are ready with your comments. So this shows that past, present, and future related to research and what is happening across the globe, you share that knowledge with our esteemed participants. And as rightly pointed out by our honorable Anuj Goyal ji, the activities taken by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India under our chairmanship of our sir, we are doing a lot of things. Sir has updated that, and we will definitely look forward to work with you together with IIM Raipur and do much more of our profession as well as for our nation. And the participants have got immense knowledge related to research, and they can come to you on email also if any questions are there. And as always, our secretary, I know Amit ji, working very hard. Emotionally, he is down, but today he is still there in the office. So thanks, Amit ji, for your hard work and your dedication toward this committee work. And with this word, the last slide, the wording that wish you all a happy research, which was there in the Rajesh Pathak ji's slide. So I am sharing that word, that let's have a happy research, knowledge sharing with all you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, sir. Thank you, Chairman, sir. Thank you, Rajesh Pathak, sir. Thank you, the audience, for your patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Umesh
you very
Sharma,
much,
sir. Thank you, Anuj ji.
Mr. Pathak ji.
And thank you.
Dr. Amit Agrawal ji.
Thank you, Amit ji. Thank you
I'm
very
very
much.
grateful to each and everyone present here. Thank you very much.